What's up, guys? I'm back with another video about some online writing type of stuff, and this one is going to be about the new post that was just released yesterday, I believe it was, by Ron Arbuckle, our good friend of Garfield's caretaker, and this is an absolutely awesome post. About basically the title is in response to Alexandra Naughton's authoritative, indispensable, I was going to say indisputable, indispensable, essential, and definitive online lit guide. This post just says basically what that post had missed. And this actually touches on two really interesting and really important points that I've learned kind of the hard way over the years, and this is just such awesome information for newer writers to basically absorb as they kind of, you know, journey on into the world of online writing and stuff like that. And those points are the submission fees, which is something that's really important to kind of dive into and stuff. And then also backing up publications using the Wayback Machine or some of the other websites like the archive.ph and those other websites that I personally like to use in addition to the Wayback Machine. So first starting out with submission fees, what Ron writes here is a really good, basically, summary rundown of kind of what submission fees that you would see in submitting to magazines and what's kind of like the standard amount that you should pay and stuff like that. I agree 100% with what he says here. Especially when he says if you send more than $5, you should absolutely be receiving curated feedback specific to your work, even if they reject it. I agree with that 100%. My opinion actually is, I mean, since I'm a little bit later in my writing career, I've basically been doing this since 2012 and stuff. I don't pay for submit. I don't submit anywhere that charges submission fees. It's just something that I don't do. It's just, in my opinion, it's not worth the money whatsoever. The only time it's worth it, in one one instance, is submitting to places like Maudlin House, which have a very fast expedited response for a reasonable price. Because there are a number of magazines that will offer expedited responses for an extra price, but sometimes their their definition of expedited will be, we'll send you an expedited response within 3 weeks if you pay $10, or if you pay, whatever, something like that. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's not enough of an expedited response to pay that much money for something like that. That's just kind of ridiculous in my opinion. What Maudlin House does and what Mallory does at Maudlin House, which is awesome and I think is really the only way to justify this expense, is she charges $5 for a 24-hour response. So that is something I've used many times in the past, and that, in my opinion, that's something that's really worth it, because you're getting an almost instant response, being in terms of the world of online writing and stuff. 1 day is nothing, so that's a great investment, and $5 is the maximum that I would be paying. I know there are some other magazines. I think it was Cleaver magazine that, I don't know if they still do this, but they did this a while ago. Like, it was some literally some ungodly uh, dollar amount for an expedited response. Like it was 19.99 or like $20 or $25 for for an expedited response of a week or something, which is utterly insane. Um, I'm not trying to disparage them. I could be misremembering that, but it's just these are things that you will see in the world of writing and everything. Now that everything has switched to online over the past 8 or 10 years or whatever. And um, another really big thing regarding submission fees, uh, and why I think it's so important to talk about them and shed light on them, as Ron did in this article, is that there's so many disingenuous like scams that go on in this world and everything, that I mean, it is just a good blanket method to not pay submission fees at all, because there are so many literary magazines or publishers or whatever that, as he said in this article, which is a great point, where they don't have anyone listed on the masthead. They don't have any extra information. So a lot of times you have no idea who you're submitting to. You have no idea when your piece is going to be published. If it does get accepted, you have no idea, what their method of operation is. And I know that the writer Becky Tuck. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I apologize for that. But she has her whole newsletter called the Lit Mag News, I believe it is, and she's done a number of really large posts she's done literally like investigative journalism into a lot of literary magazines that have basically scammed writers, where they just leave their submittable open. Their operations have not published a story or a book in many months or years, but their submittable is still open. They're still accepting submissions. They're still charging submission fees. They're still accepting stories. And then the writer gets very excited, and 6 months pass, 3 months pass, 6 months pass. They don't have a date on when their piece is going to be published. They try emailing the editors. They get no response. And now, the $3, the $5, sometimes the $10 that they paid to submit to this mysterious magazine is just completely gone, because I don't know if it is a scam, if no one's monitoring this thing. Like, I don't even know how this stuff works. It's literally a black box where money and your story goes in and then nothing comes out, and it's just lost. So this is a great piece of advice to really, don't pay submission fees that are too expensive, that are places that you're not familiar with. And just, again, my opinion is just don't pay submission fees at all, ever. But that's up to to the individual writer, if they're really interested in a very well-known magazine, and and it's something that is really trustworthy, like Smoke Long or Split Lip magazine. I know that they used to have free submissions. Now they charge fees sometimes during certain months, and then other months they'll have no fees. So that's another thing to keep an eye out. So there is a lot to watch out for in terms of the submission fee issue. But yeah, it's just there's so many scams, and it's just like it's not worth it's not worth paying that money. Like I know that some people can justify it in terms of like, oh, I'm paying double this or triple this for a coffee at Starbucks every single morning, so I'll just skip my morning coffee and then pay, a $6 submission fee or $3 submission fee. I don't think that's necessary. Um, and and relating to the past, you know, posts and magazines that I've talked about in the last two videos, there are so many more magazines popping up uh, that are independently run. They don't use submittable. They don't charge fees. They never will charge fees. And then they have these great aesthetic visions that are going to care for your work so much more that at this point there are so few reasons to ever pay submission fees that I literally, again, I know I've said it a bunch of times, I just don't pay submission fees, just full stop at this point. Um, yeah, so that was a great piece of advice, a great little summary there. So that was awesome. That's something that younger, newer writers definitely should learn about and be up on and everything. The next one, with backing up your work uh, using the Wayback Machine and everything. That's really important as well. Um, and I actually wrote an article about this about 3 or 4 years ago in for Chill Subs, because as I explained in the last video, um, literary magazines will so often just shut down without any notice whatsoever. Um, like they just disappear into the ether and they're just gone forever. And your work will be gone forever. You'll be on your author website and you'll be trying to recommend a story to someone, or you'll be trying to, even people who are looking for, if they're uh, applying to MFAs, or if they're trying to uh, get a volunteer job on the masthead of another magazine, and you're like, oh, here's my work, suggesting that as part of your resume, you'll be clicking on your author website. You'll go to some of your older pieces that came out a few years ago, and you'll click on it, and the link will be dead. Like the story will be gone, the magazine will be gone. There'll be no notice that this magazine closed up. It's just gone. It just disappears, and that's not surprising because running a magazine is tough. It's volunteer work. You don't get paid for it. You have to operate at a loss. It takes multiple hours, many hours per week in the terms of some magazines that publish longer pieces and stuff. And yeah, family, life, work, all kinds of stuff just make it hard to continue and everything. So a lot of times magazines will just disappear without even an announcement and stuff. So it's really important to back up your work that gets published on the day that it premieres, so you don't forget. So what I like to do is I like to make it a piece of the routine of like the promotion of that day. So I'll create the link and put it into my author website. Well, actually, the first thing I'll do is back it up on the Wayback Machine and on archive.ph. So I have two separate archived copies of the story, and then I'll add the new link onto my author website. And most of the time, I won't even put the original link of it being published in the magazine on my author website. I'll literally put the snapshot from the Wayback Machine as the link on my author website. So that's a nice little shortcut. So, years later, I don't have to go back and fix all these links and everything. This way, I have the permanent backup right there on my author website, so that's never going to go away. So that's one thing that I do. Some people might think it's slightly a little bit of an eyesore or whatever to have the stripe of the Wayback Machine on top. And one thing that does annoy me is that the links for the Wayback Machine take like 3 times longer to load. So like you literally have to sit there for 20 or 30 seconds before the page will even load. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but people everyone is impatient these days. So like if a page is taking 20 or 30 seconds to load, to a person who's never been on your website before, that might make them think, oh, that link is dead. That story's not there anymore. And then their mind goes to something else, and they've left your writing behind. They left your author website behind. Now maybe they're not going to buy one of your books. They're not going to look into your writing, and you've kind of lost them as a reader and as a potential, fan of your work, which is unfortunate. But I do like to have the permanent record of my work right available on my author website, instead of having to kind of like babysit my author website in this really neurotic manner where I'm just every 6 months or whatever just going back to the oldest links and clicking them to make sure those websites are still there. So that's just one thing that I do. And then after that's all set up on the author website, then I will go to social media, Twitter, whatever, and I'll promote the publication of the story with the link to the original website, because that's just a better way to do it for social media. But yeah, it's really important to get in the habit of using the Wayback Machine, because just thinking about all the incredible amount of work that each writer puts into writing or coming up with the idea of a story, writing the story, rewriting it, editing it, reading it out loud to see if it sounds good, if it's a poem or if it's dialogue based, or if it's a prose piece. I do that as well. And then you have to, do scouting of which magazines it would fit the best with. And then you have to send out the submissions and the submission letters. And then you have to wait for 3 months or whatever. And there's all that incredible amount of work. And then your piece finally gets published. And it's like, this very satisfying thing. And then, 18 months later, it is gone forever. So like, I know it's a pain to to take an extra step and go to the Wayback Machine and back it up, but that's super important, because think of all the dozens of hours of hard work you poured into the piece to begin with, and then the submissions process, and all the time you waited for it to get published. So yeah, it's a good piece of writing, and it's your writing and it's your work. So you should absolutely take the time to back it up and make sure that its existence is going to continue past the life of the literary magazine. Which, again, as I was saying in the last video, based on Mallory Smart's kind of 3-year cycles of time in the online writing world, that's a good estimate for how long a big percentage of the literary magazines are going to survive. It's going to be, they're usually like a 3 to 5 year lifespan. And obviously there are huge outliers, because there are independent literary magazines that have been around for a very long time. Like Hobart has been around for 20 years. Other magazines have been around for a while. X-Ray has been around since 2018. Um, they're going to go on. They're almost at 10 years. Maudlin House has been around for 12 years. So there are definitely uh, you know lifers in the in the system, but the pretty big majority are going to be right in that 3 to 5 year range, and then they kind of some die off, and then new ones filter in. As I talked about in the last one, and just speaking personally, like my own magazine, Scaffold, has been around for a little bit over 2 years, almost 2.5 years, and I mean, like it feels like it's been double that amount of time. It's just uh, it's just a lot of work, and um, so I definitely understand why the magazines, a lot of literary magazines, just disappear into the ether. Because life happens. It's really tough. Nobody's getting paid, and you're operating at a loss. So that was another thing. Um, the what was another? Um, there was one one other interesting thing in here about the way that you find, uh, or well, actually, maybe talking about the rejection procedures would be interesting, because that is something that can be really tough for a lot of writers, who are newer to submitting their work and everything, because so much of writing is so incredibly personal, and it's literally, you're taking these very emotionally charged pieces of yourself, like, again, literally pieces of your soul, pieces of whatever. You're taking those things, and you're vomiting them onto a, you know not a page, but a Word document. If you're writing it by hand, it's a page. But and it's such a personal and such a intimate and um, vulnerable process. And then when it gets rejected, it absolutely does feel like it's a personal rejection of you as a person, because that's your soul that you're pouring into the writing. It's such an essential piece of, whether it's something that is inspired by what happened to you in real life, whether it did happen to you in real life, um, whether it's just a very distilled version of some of the emotions that you felt at you know the most difficult parts of your life, stuff like that. And then you're sending it out into, again, the ether, and you're having these random strangers reading it, and then it's just out there for months and months, and you're waiting for so long, and it's such a it's a difficult thing for it to just be in limbo for such a long time. And then you get an email back, and it's just a form letter where it's just like, oh, I'm so sorry, but thank you for submitting, but it's just not a great fit for us, but thanks again for submitting, bye bye. And it seems so dismissive, and so impersonal, and it seems, I mean, it legitimately, when you're first doing it, it legitimately does seem cruel, because of how you as the writer are pouring so much emotion into this thing and you're sending it out, but the person who is responding to you is pouring zero emotion whatsoever into their response. And it's so clinical and sterile and um, it, I'm not going to say that it can seem dismissive. It's not dismissive because it's a form letter that's copy and pasted, but it can seem dismissive, and that can be really really difficult to deal with. But um, yeah, the after being on the other side of the ledger for the past 2.5 years, like it really is like those words good fit is the absolute that's the key to everything. It's fit. It's not quality. It's not how good this piece is. It's not how powerful the emotions are, how great the structure is, how impressive the craft is, how beautiful the sentences are, how interesting and creative the word choice is and everything. Those all play a part in the whole decision and everything. But fit is such an important thing because it's like it's legitimately like dating, because there are so many great people out there. They're beautiful and talented and they're funny and they're charming and they have so much charisma and everything. But if someone is you know obsessed with being this huge outdoorsman and all they want to do every single minute that they have of free time is they want to be hiking and they want to be biking and they want to go fishing and they want to do all this stuff. But if all you want to do is be indoors and, reading books or something, that relationship is not going to work because you two are going to be at odds. So it's a very similar thing with finding the right fit with the literary magazine that you're sending your piece out to. Because the literary magazines themselves, it might be difficult to see from the writer's perspective because the writer is only going to be reading well, first of all, the writer's only going to be reading the pieces that get published in the magazine, which is a big part of it. But there's no way for the writer to read, well, there is, but it takes a long time. But I was going to say there's no way for the writer to read the entire corpus of that magazine's publishing history. And so over the course of that magazine's publishing history, they're trying to curate a unique artistic aesthetic that it is like they're trying to carve out their own niche of the type of pieces that they're publishing. And so if something doesn't fit with that, it doesn't matter how, again, great that subjectively great that piece of writing is, there is probably not going to be accepted by that magazine because that magazine has to think about what is published in the past, the types of pieces it has in its queue that are going to be published going forward, and what it wants to publish in the future, and what it wants that entire catalog of pieces to represent artistically. But basically, I'm just talking about the aesthetic, artistic vision of what the magazine is trying to publish. So that's something that was really tough for me to grapple with when I was a younger writer and everything, because as I said in the last video, a big mistake that I would make is I would read a bunch of pieces in a magazine that I really wanted to have my work appear in, and then I would start from a blank document and try to write a piece that that magazine would like. And as I said in the last video, that didn't work much at all, because it it's really difficult to do that, because the magazine is, even if they have a they're carving out their own unique aesthetic, but it's so funny when I see this kind of happen in the submissions for Scaffold and stuff, and it's like it makes no sense, and it's infuriating for writers to see, because it's like I do want, I am looking for certain things, but I'm not looking for the same exact thing that recently appeared in the magazine, because I already have that thing, because it just appeared in the magazine, because I just published it. So it kind of goes to the old saying, I think it was in Hollywood with like screenwriting and stuff like that, where it's like, give me the same thing but different, which obviously is infuriating because that makes no sense. But it's like, I'm looking for something that's in that same ballpark of creativity and weirdness, and just like off kilter writing, but I don't want it to be the exact same thing that I just published. So if it's like some weird bulleted list of, a few weeks or a month ago, there was a piece in Scaffold about this guy in the 80s who had literally like eaten all of these weird objects and stuff, and it was like literally inanimate objects that shouldn't be able to be eaten. It's like it ended in like an entire airplane, like somehow. So it's like, that was a cool and creative story, or piece, not really a story, but. And so if after reading that, someone had sent me another piece that's a bulleted list, and it's very, very similar to that, thinking like, oh, so this off-kilter type of stuff is what this magazine is looking for, they just published this piece that's, a bulleted list of these very bizarre inanimate objects that this guy ate in the 80s, then, let me send them a story about, all of these things that me and my friends dared each other to eat during, lunch during middle school or something. It's like, that makes sense logically, but I already have a bulleted list of a similar version. So it's like, yeah, give me something similar to that, but different, and not too similar, but not like a boring, realist Raymond Carver story, whatever. Like I do like those stories as well, but not for Scaffold and stuff. There are other places that would publish that. So it's like, not something that's 100% the same, and not something that's 90% the same, and not something that's 0% the same. Like, give something that's 60% similar, like something like, I don't know. That's that's very misleading, but that's just how I feel and stuff. So like, it's really tough, and it can feel like a personal, like a personal affront, or it can feel like a very dismissive type of thing when your work gets rejected, and you put so much of yourself into it, and then it's just like you just receive a form letter, and it's like, oh, thank you so much for submitting, but unfortunately it's not a right fit. Thank you, bye. Yeah, it's really tough, but it's absolutely not personal. It's never personal. It's always about trying to curate this unique and hopefully interesting and artistically stimulating aesthetic, for the magazine, and to carve out a niche that is unique. So that's one thing I've noticed over my times as a submitter, and then as being an editor of a small magazine over the past 2.5 years. So that was another really important summary that was in this article by Ron, which is great. And yeah, and then on top of that, I know I've been talking for forever, but the curated list of the magazines at the bottom of this piece is amazing. This is great stuff, because this makes it this is a perfect thing to bookmark for basically any writers. This is great. I've already bookmarked it, and because with databases like Duotrope and Chill Subs, they make you search for what you want. It's like they tell you they have a list where it's like, we have 7,000 literary magazines in our database, and there are two options. Here they are alphabetically, so you can go through all 7,000 alphabetically, or well, I'm sure there you can separate it based on lengths and what they want and when they're open and stuff, but or you can search for things. So it's making the writer do all of the work. In this case, it's basically taking a list of, he said, what was it, 200 of some of the most popular magazines in this online writing space, or scene, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically just listing it out with links. And not only is this great for submitters, this is great for just reading and your own inspiration. Like, if you want to, like if you're stuck and you can't find a book that you want to read, or if you want to expose yourself to different types of writing, this is an amazing list to go to, because you can just go here and then you can just read all kinds of short pieces from all of these magazines that are in this online writing type of scene and everything. Yeah, it's great to have it all listed out for you instead of having to search and to put in all of these factors that you want to separate, if it's open or not, whether the lengths they accept and stuff. It's like, yeah, we know that all of that stuff is involved work, but this is the starting point, and this is a great way to do it. Go to the magazine, read some of their work, and then if you like it or whatever, then you can submit, or you can just enjoy the magazine, which is great. And this has some of the newest magazines on here as well. So this is an awesome list, and this probably took a huge amount of work. So that's great stuff. That's a great reference for new writers and veterans and everyone in between. Yeah, this is awesome. So, I mean, this is a fantastic job by Ron. This is another great post. Yeah, and I highly recommend that everyone looks at this post, reads as much as possible, gets all the information that would help them, and keeps this post bookmarked in their internet browser or on their phone, whatever, for future reading and for future submitting, because this is great stuff. So yeah, another amazing article. All right. Thanks for listening to my 40-minute tirade.